Thanks for staying with us. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly, continuing with our special edition of The Factor, the growing terror threat. The issue is front and center in the 2016 presidential campaign, with the Republican candidates having very different views on how to confront it. But do any of them actually have the right plan to win the fight? Here now to analyze, Fox News contributor Deneen Borelli, along with the former Homeland Security Advisor for New York State, Michael Balboni. Deneen, now I look at the research and you say of all the 2016 candidates, you say Ted Cruz brings it the best. Why?
We have researched this at Conservative Review, and with Ted Cruz, he is someone who stands for Israel. He is someone who has strong sanctions against Iran and Russia. He agreed with those sanctions. He's principled. He's someone who is very outspoken. And, you know, based on what we know of his track record in the Senate, I believe he is someone who would be good on foreign policy and national defense and keeping our country safe.
Did you dig down into the specifics? In other words, would Ted Cruz send American boots on the ground into the fight?
I know for sure. I've read that he will do airstrikes. In terms of the boots on the ground, that I'm not sure about.
Okay, Michael, what about you? Who do you think would be the strongest to fight terror?
So Marco Rubio has articulated very clearly the absence of leadership when it comes to the Middle East strategy, and he has pointed out that you can't take ISIS and say that it's an isolated problem. It's in fact growing. The caliphate's going. He's identified that quite clearly. Which he's been on kind of the front lines of this immigration issue, and he said, "Yeah, I'll go for an amnesty bill once the borders are secure." So he's been kind of consistent throughout his career, and he seems to have a little bit more in depth in terms of what are the issues that are really going to affect the domestic perception on terrorism.
And what about Rubio? Would he send American boots on the ground into the fight?
He's called for airstrikes. I think what everybody said is we need a stronger policy there, but nobody's willing to commit boots on the ground yet. They want to see what's happening in terms of the expansion of the caliphate. But I think what he's really articulated so far is that this is not a problem for somebody else. This is our problem.
I noticed neither one of you picked Jeb Bush, which is kind of surprising a little bit. I would be surprised. I think some would say, you know, a Bush might be stronger on terror. They may send some boots on the ground, and maybe that's what we need.
But I think his brother, George W. Bush, would overshadow, based on what happened in Iraq. So I think that's something that would overshadow Jeb Bush in terms of what he would decide to do.
What do you say, Mike?
I think that Rubio seems to be a fresher perspective. I think that the Bush dynasty has demonstrated a very strong anti-terrorism, counterterrorism policy, but I don't necessarily see Jeb Bush embracing that in the same way that Rubio does. And again, I like his perspective on it.
A lot of this fight with ISIS is going to be done via the internet. It's going to be done via maybe spying, hacking into various groups, including ISIS. Either one, Michael specifically, you must have seen a lot of that in New York State.
Intelligence is absolutely essential, and that's a part of the national debate. It's so fascinating to see where people are on the NSA and data collection, and how you just can't throw this thing away. You know, let's not forget the lessons of 9/11, and yet a lot of the candidates are kind of saying, maybe we're not going to go through there because we're going to take privacy over security. I think Rubio's sounded a little bit of a better balance there, where he said, no, we need this.
Talk to me about Hillary now. What will Hillary, if she ends up being the president, what would she bring that would be different from President Obama?
Well, first of all, where is she? We haven't really heard really anything that she would plan to put forth in terms of what to do. So, you know, who knows what Hillary will do? The woman, I think, is hiding really under her office desk. She's not really coming forth to let Americans where she stands on certain issues. And I believe people really need to hear what her plans are and what she would put forth on the table.
Would President Hillary Clinton scare you?
You know, it's funny. I don't know how she's going to. We know how the debate's going to begin with her. It's Benghazi. It's going to start with Benghazi, and she's got to get through all of those questions and all those issues. And there's so many things like missing emails and all these other issues. Past that, I don't think that she would be weak on security. But again, we haven't really seen what this presidency would look like in that direction.
Okay, Deneen, what about Rand Paul? He's been the one who said, send boots, but make them Arab boots on the ground. Send just the Arabs. How is he perceived on terror?
I know in 2012 he supported limited sanctions, especially in Russia and Iran. But you know, he's another one who's going to be overshadowed by his father, who is he's a non-interventionist. So I think he's going to have that on his baggage list, if you will.
What about it, Mike?
Rand Paul makes me a little nervous, only because he's, there's libertarian perspective of government. Less is better, and he was really against the collection of any data. And I think that you can't really just take that out of the equation. You need more of that, not less. Frankly.
You know who's the hottest candidate right now as far as movement up? Donald Trump.
No.
Go ahead. Take it.
Well, obviously he brings a business perspective. You're fired, this type of thing. But he's got a base popularity and a base name recognition that none of the other candidates have. What's going to be really interesting to see is how tough is he going to be, and how responsible will some of his viewpoints be in terms of how to conduct, say, a war on terror.
I look at him as a problem on Donald Trump, problem solver. He's someone who is not soft-spoken, that's for sure. But time will tell in terms of what his plan would be.
I got to tell you, if I'm sitting across the table from some of the other candidates and versus sitting across the table from Donald Trump, and he's got the military behind him, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah. Well, listen, as I said, you never know with politics. But again, you mentioned Donald Trump, so he is someone I see as a problem solver. Who knows if folks will rally behind him and support him in terms of being president, but we'll see.
You know who you don't hear very much, and he's not declared yet, but Chris Christie. Anyone think that Chris Christie would bring something different to the table?
No talent.
Michael?
I don't know. He's been partnering certainly with New York in terms of some of the terrorism stuff, and from a governor's perspective, he's got that viewpoint. I've just not seen him articulate a position that would break him from the pack on the issue of terrorism.
Yeah, can you imagine how earlier in the show one of our guests said that President Obama is going to leave office and leave the incoming president with a huge mess pile to clean up.
No, it is a big mess, and Americans really should be concerned about Obama not having a plan at all, calling them a JV team, and just not really showing good leadership.
What about it, Michael?
Yeah, well, he really he went into office and he basically said, we're going to change the world perception of the United States. We're going to take a dominant role on the world stage. That hasn't happened. And what we've seen is now it's almost like a repeat of what happened before 9/11.
Are we going to have another 9/11? You were there. You saw. Are we at risk now?
Biggest concern is that they have a safe haven to operate from. When you give these organizations time to develop it, that's when they're most dangerous. That's why you got to be constantly proactive in going at them. And that's not what we're doing here.
Odds of that happening?
Well, that's an incredibly coordinated, sophisticated attack. We've taken out a lot of their leadership. Don't know.
Okay. We're going to leave it right there. Deneen, Michael, thank you very much.